Stand by to initiate release sequencer. On my mark. 5.
We're on express elevator to hell. Going down.
2. 1. Mark.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mark, a.k.a. Derringer. Today is Sunday, April 22nd, and you are listening to episode 153 of the Instant Action Podcast, your weekly source for Planetside 2 news and information. As always, I'm brought to you by great listeners like you via the Support the Show tab on instantactionpodcast.com. I want to talk about that Support the Show tab just for a moment here because it's that time of year again. I went and just made my payment to re-up my hosting for another year for instantactionpodcast.com. I really could not have done that without the help of my listeners, the Planetside 2 community, everybody out there who listens to the show and has either made a direct donation to me via PayPal, is using my Amazon link, makes a purchase through my Spreadshirt store, is a member of or is a patron over on the Patreon site. Again, if it wasn't for all of you, I wouldn't be able to continue to keep paying my podcast bill each year. So again, I did re-up it for another year, so I'm good now until May 2019, which means you guys can look forward to podcasts for another year. And in that year's time, we're certainly going to hit episode 200 of the Instant Action Podcast. I wonder when that will actually be. Let's see. Looks like maybe February of next year could be episode 200, so look forward to that. I will try to do something special for episode 200. We'll see if we can get Daybreak Games on board at that time as well. Yeah, I know I'm talking next year, 2019, but it's coming up. And I guess second, as you can hear, my voice is pretty much back to normal. Do still have a little bit of a lingering cough, but again, I feel, oh my God, so much better than I did the past couple weeks. I actually went and played soccer this past Thursday. I haven't done that in at least 2 or 3 weeks because I just wasn't feeling well. My outdoor league started as well. Of course, our game today got canceled because if you're in the Massachusetts area, you know, like me, everything is pretty much still waterlogged and most fields are not open at this point. But yeah, I'm pretty much back 100%. So if you are someone who likes watching my live streams, get ready because I'm going to start doing live streaming again on Twitch this week. I've taken 2 weeks off just because I couldn't do it with all the coughing and stuff like that. So, but I am back. And I guess the last piece of news about me for those who care, because I know some of you don't care about this little opening intro stuff. My daughter has finally decided on what college she's going to attend. So if any of you go to the University of New Hampshire, that is where my daughter will be a freshman starting this fall. My wife and I are extremely excited about this. If you're a listener who's gone to college, in college now, you know what it's like. College is an exciting time. I have many fond memories from when I went to college. So, again, very excited that my daughter's finally chosen, and we'll be ramping up all the college stuff in the next couple of months. But enough about me. You guys are here for Planetside 2. So what's in store for this week's show? Well, first, it was an extremely slow news week at Planetside 2, so thankfully there is a bunch of player-made content this week to talk about. So they can't all be weeks where Planetside 2 drops a patch or two, a game update, etc. They update the PTS, all kinds of stuff like that. So, like I said, I'm going to have to go towards player-made stuff. So I want to talk about Iridar's updated Sidearm guide. I also want to talk about Ginger Boy's Player Studio tutorial series on YouTube. And I want to talk about some silly weapon ideas that were recently posted on the Planetside Reddit. And then I want to finish up by talking about a game other than Planetside 2. So strap in as we hot drop into another episode of the Instant Action Podcast. So first up this week, like I said, Iridar has updated his Sidearm guide, which is on the iridar.net website. If you're not familiar with his website, you should get yourself familiar with his website because, I mean, let's be honest, there's a lot of information there that new players can really use. So obviously, unless you've been living under a rock, you're aware that Daybreak Games just went through a massive change to how the majority of the sidearms in the game works. I mean, if you listen to 2 shows ago, all those pistol changes went live recently with, I mean, and we're talking about pistols for every faction. Even the NS weapons got changed as well. Commissioner now feels like it's no longer the go-to weapon for most players because of its newer, slow equip time, and now it sounds like some people are using the underboss now instead of the commissioner because he didn't get that same equip time change. But again, that's neither here nor there. Again, Iridar has put together a pretty comprehensive guide on everything that you want to know about various pistols within the game itself, including, like I said, all 3 factions are included here, every weapon that they all have. It also has all the various NS weapons, including my favorite, the NS 357 IA version, has information about all of those. But more importantly, he recently had done basically a poll of the community to try and get an idea of what those folks feel the better weapons within, or the better pistols within the game is right now. He asked people to take a quiz and rate each sidearm on a scale of 1 to 7 for how effective it is for a competitive infantry player as a sidearm or an emergency backup weapon. Commissioner still ranked number 1 within that list. But the underboss was a close second, followed by the pilot. The Desperado and the Repeater were pretty close after that, followed by the Black Hand and the Inquisitor, and then, it goes through there where every other pistol itself is ranked from there on. And then, if you guys remember on last week's show, I talked about the Planetside 2 Discord. There are infantry mentors on the Planetside 2 Discord. They were also asked about how they feel about the various pistols in the game now that the changes themselves have gone live. They all seem to indicate that the underboss is probably the better pistol in the game at this point in time, and the real reason for that is because it didn't receive the same nerf that the Commissioner did to its equip time. So right now, the underboss has its fast draw time, rate of fire, and alpha damage. It's pretty much considered the best one at this particular point, and honestly, I've seen a lot of players in-game actually using the Commissioner who weren't using it before. Granted, I'm the one who's still using the IA variant, but that's just because I have it and I need to use it whenever I possibly can. So again, more than anything, if you're a new player and you don't really understand how sidearms work in the game itself, or you're not sure which might be the better sidearms for you to use for your various factions, Iridar's also put together a table about how different qualities of the different sidearms relate to kind of average values themselves. And it just to give you an idea how each sidearm actually feels, and what its quick draw is with alpha damage, hip fire accuracy, equip time, what its DPS is, its effective range and how the different things affect that, what its ammo size of the magazine is and how much it has in reserve, things like that. It's an interesting little chart, which is it's sort of a green, yellow, red chart telling you which ones are better at one thing, worse at another thing, just to give you an idea of how those different weapons work. I really haven't thought too much about sidearms because, I use the IA version of the NS 357. But if I was someone who did not have that, then certainly a chart like this would allow me to play around with different ones and see what might be the better sidearms to kind of use in the game itself. I guess just to sum it up, let's give Iridar some props for this, for putting all this stuff together. Again, I know a lot of veteran players maybe don't agree with everything that he writes or everything that he says, and I do think Iridar's guides are more geared towards players who don't really understand how all this stuff works, or maybe not so much don't understand, but want to learn a little bit more about the nitty-gritty and intricacies of the different sidearms in the game itself. I think it's a good resource for someone who's just looking for general information about all the pistols in one particular place and get some good information regarding it. So again, I'll send you all to iridar.net and include a link to his updated pistol guide in this week's show notes. So second this week, again, going back to the well of player-created stuff, is a Player Studio tutorial series that Ginger Boy has actually put up on YouTube. And now, I know about Player Studio, and the reason I know about Player Studio is because back in the day, I had looked about getting a decal for the Instant Action Podcast into Player Studio so that people could purchase it and whatnot. I never really followed through on it. I designed some other stuff. I designed a kind of a silly Halloween type decal as well, which just never really got off the ground. It got rejected over at the Player Studio because I needed to do more work on it. And I'll be honest, I am not a graphic designer. I don't draw well. I don't do anything like that. The art skill in my family, my daughter's got the art skill. It certainly didn't come from my side of the family. But if I was looking for information about Player Studio moving forward, again, if I was thinking about resubmitting a Instant Action Podcast decal, which is something I do want to do. It's something I've wanted in the game itself, something that people can use, buy. Even if it was freely given away, I wouldn't care so much just to have something like that in the game itself. And for me, I don't want the necessary wording all over it. I would just like a picture of a drop pod for the most part. Maybe a purple, a red, and a blue like I do have for my current logo, maybe without all the wording on it, or I don't even know. I haven't really thought through it. But now that we have Player Studios in the state that it is now, it's number of years since Player Studio has been introduced. If I'm going to start looking into doing something like that, Ginger Boy is nice enough to put up a Player Studio tutorial series on YouTube itself. He's got a total of 7 videos, and those 7 videos are, an introduction, what is Player Studio, which is part 1, a getting started section, which is part 2, a tutorial on the different programs and modeling for Planetside 2 is part 3. A quick tip about the right and wrong way to sharpen edges in Blender is part 4. A section on texturing, which is part 5. A section on PS Viewer, which is the program that you actually can download assets and play around with them in Planetside 2. That's part 6. And the final section, which is part 7, is how to make a submission to the Player Studio. Now, when you're looking at these videos, the first one is less than 2 minutes long. The next one's 8 minutes. Part 3 is 13 minutes. The quick tip is less than 3 minutes. The texturing one is 10.5 minutes. The PS Viewer one is 11.5 minutes, and the submission one is just barely over 7 minutes. We're talking a total of between 50 minutes and an hour to go through all these different to go through all these different videos on how to get involved with Player Studio. So a big thank you to Ginger Boy for putting this stuff out there. Honestly, this is something that Daybreak Games should probably have put together and put out there, about how to do stuff like this. But the fact that a community member has taken the time to put these various videos together, that's huge for the community. I know that there are people out there that are interested in creating things for Player Studio, whether they're helmets, whether they're armor, whether they're guns like Doku's created for the game, or even just a simple decal for the game itself. I know that there are a lot of people out there that wish they had the skills to do some of this stuff. So the fact that Ginger Boy put together this series, the programs and modeling section alone, part 3, is probably what I consider the most influential less than 13 minutes that you can watch out of this whole thing to kind of get some ideas of what you should be using, what you can be using, and what you can create in Planetside 2 using the various programs. Also the section on texturing is invaluable. And finally, a section just on how to make your final submission. I mean, the instructions are certainly on the Player Studio website when you go, but just to have 7 minutes of Ginger Boy explaining what he does to go through to get those things submitted and ultimately accepted within Planetside 2 is huge and very, very much an invaluable resource for the game itself. So again, I just want to say thank you to Ginger Boy if you listen to this. Thank you very much for putting this together. Don't know how much I personally will be using it because, like I said, my artistic skills are slim to none. But I do know that there is a good subset of the community that is looking for information like this and definitely will be using it. I mean, I'm looking at it right now. It was put up 4 days ago, and almost 200 people have gone through and watched these various videos to get information on it. I mean, if there's going to be 200 people submitting new things to Planetside 2, that is nothing but good for the community. I mean, giving us a lot of new things within the game itself. And who knows if just by putting this stuff up, he inspires the next Doku or anyone else who's huge in the community putting together stuff for the game itself. And also, there's no telling what learning things like this can do for a career in the future. I mean, I don't know how much people actually get money from things within Planetside 2, but I mean, I know back during the Reachcast days, we had talked to a number of the people who were submitting things to Player Studio, and the amount of money that they were just making off people buying cosmetics in the game was kind of mind-blowing for Torx and Hawks and I, because we were like, God, if we just had the ability to do something like this, we could cash in on a game like this with stuff like that. So again, I will include a link to this entire tutorial series. Again, it's just 7 videos. It's not even an hour's worth of videos. Just to get some really good tips and tricks on what to do, how to create your first thing, how to submit it, and potentially how to make some money in Planetside 2. So again, good on you, Ginger Boy. I love the stuff. I love what you've done. And again, I'll include a link. All right, third topic this week. This was a Reddit post a couple days ago put up by Omega Scorpion, and he suggested a new silly weapon idea, basically a faction pistol plus pole arm hybrid for the game itself. And what this has done more than anything, it has reignited the discussion between the player base and the developers of Planetside 2, how much players want pole arms or some sort of melee weapon beside knives in Planetside 2. I mean, it's re-sparked the request for swords in Planetside 2, for more shields. I mean, we do know the NC Max has a shield, but just think how cool the NC Max would be if it had that shield, and in the other hand, it also had some sort of giant melee weapon, like Omega Scorpion suggests an NC pole axe, which is basically an axe head on a giant pole, but also it's still a gun on top of that. He created an idea of a Bardich for the TR, something called the Guandao for the VS. I've never heard of that one before. I should probably look that up before I actually talk about it. It's got to be some sort of Japanese weapon. Oh, my apologies. It's actually a Chinese pole weapon. My apologies to all the Chinese listeners out there. I did not mean to offend you by suggesting that this was a Japanese weapon. I do apologize. But on top of that, he also suggests an NS weapon called the Yari. I looked that one up before I said anything. That one is actually a Japanese-type spear. But these are very interesting things. And, of course, everybody assumes that these are just for maxes. And Omega Scorpion comes out and says, no, I kind of envision these to be something that any everyday infantry player could actually use in the game itself. Now, I don't know how I really feel about that because mixing a pole arm with a pistol kind of seems a little overpowered within the game itself. And I mean, let's be honest, the developers would need to do a lot of work in the game to introduce any type of melee weapon bigger than a knife into the game itself. But I'm really intrigued by the models that he's put forth. And I mean, they're just drawings, but still, it elicited responses from the devs, saying that they want something like that. And that further elicited a response from Ginger Boy saying, if I make these, will you put them in game? Again, it's really sparking that idea of getting some sort of bigger melee weapon into Planetside 2 itself. And I think in general, the community is definitely on board to add something like this into the game. But I do think that we all need to take a step back and realize that the coding to put something like this into Planetside 2 probably far outweighs any sort of monetary return that the devs are going to get out of putting this into the game. So, I mean, at this point, it's probably safe to assume that we're never going to see anything like this in Planetside 2. That being said, if tomorrow the devs come out and say we love this idea so much that we're going to do it, I will be the first to say bring this into the game. Let's add some kind of interesting new melee type of weapons in the game itself. I am afraid of a infiltrator though uncloaking next to me, and maybe a VS infiltrator uncloaking with a Guandao next to me and absolutely shredding me before I can even know that they're there. So that kind of scares me a little bit. Also, NC and TR Maxes with giant pole arms coming at me kind of scares the shit out of me as well. But I don't know. It's an interesting thought. And Omega Scorpion says it's a silly weapon idea, but I mean, how silly is it really if we can picture something like this? I mean, everybody's first thoughts obviously go to Warhammer 40K, where you've got people in giant suits of power armor with maces and swords and axes and stuff like that. I mean, it's already been done. It's already out there. It's already canon in some other games. I would be very interested to see something like that come into Planetside 2. But again, I will temper that excitement by saying that the ability to put something like this in the game is probably so far out of scope for the devs that I would much rather they turn their attention to maybe producing a new continent like Cirrus rather than producing a new silly weapon idea. But with that, let's move on to our fourth and final topic this week. So fourth topic this week, I guess it's going to be more of a kind of a shout out or a request more than anything else, because let's be honest, there are certainly times in everybody's Planetside 2 career where the game kind of gets a little stale. And there have certainly been a few nights this past week where I've logged in, I've played for 2 hours, and I feel like I haven't found a good fight throughout the entire night. Maybe I've produced just an absolutely horrible kill-death ratio as well, and I'm ashamed to continue playing, or maybe the folks I'm playing with joke are playing TR, and I'm not a huge fan of playing TR. I'm looking for something new to kind of play when I'm a little down on Planetside 2. So, again, this is more a request more than anything else. You guys can get in touch with me. Hit me up on Twitter at the Derringer. You can, if you're on Discord, you can find me. I'm on Discord. I'm in the Planetside 2 Discord. Shoot me a message there. I'm kind of looking for something else to play when I'm a little down on Planetside 2. Yesterday, I actually installed Fortnite and played around with that a little bit. I'm not really a fan of the Battle Royale type game, so I wouldn't bother recommending something like a Fortnite or a PUBG, or even what's that new one that Cliffy B just came out with that everybody's been talking about. I don't know that I'm really interested in those because, let's be honest, I suck at those. But I'm certainly looking for any recommendations about a new game to try out. I was looking around at all the different stuff on Steam and things like that. Vermintide 2 kind of looks interesting, but I feel like I missed the boat on that one. Speaking of boats, Sea of Thieves, I'm not interested in Sea of Thieves. I think the boat's kind of left on that one too. I don't see many people playing that one anymore either. But again, I'm just looking for some recommendations. Does it mean I'm going to go out and play all these games nonstop? No, because my true love still is Planetside 2, and I'm going to continue to play Planetside 2 until the end of time. But everyone knows that there are certainly times when you're just a little bored of a game and you need to try something new to spice things up to make you realize how much you do love Planetside 2. So again, hit me up on Twitter, hit me up on Discord, hit me up wherever. Send me an email at the show and just let me know what you're playing instead of Planetside 2, and maybe I will join you. But with that, let's move on to housekeeping this week.
Housekeeping. Housekeeping.
Come back later, please.
Housekeeping.
Not now.
Housekeeping.
Go away.
I coming anyway?
So it was a quiet week on housekeeping. Everybody knows that I was sick, so I think they're kind of leaving me alone. Even though both Robo and Matt Nine made me read long emails last week, but that's okay. That I guess is going to be it for this week's show. But how can you get in touch with me or the show? First off, visit the website. As you know, I just renewed it, www.instantactionpodcast.com. Send me an email, instantactionshow@gmail.com. Call me, leave me a voicemail, 347-4VM-4PS2, or that's 347-486-4772. The show's Twitter is @InstActPodcast, and my personal Twitter is @TheDerringer. So in closing, if you've enjoyed the show, please leave me a review on your podcast listening avenue of choice, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or anywhere else. Also, feel free to tell your friends and outfit mates about the show. And finally, thanks for listening, and keep spamming that Join Combat, formerly known as Instant Action button.
Get your arms combined.